Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fusedlogic podcast. This is episode 1 of season 2 in 2017. Ready for countdown? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff.
Well, we couldn't have picked a better way to kick off the fusedlogic podcast in 2017. This is episode 1 of season 2. My next guest is a multi-award winning Canadian comedic genius, actor, director. Ron Pederson is on the show. Ron has worked with such actors and comedians as Mike Myers, Joe Flaherty, Colin Mockery. He's an incredibly comedic mind that we've seen on Mad TV. He's written and performed sketches in The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, who's another funny man in my opinion. But more recently, Ron has returned to the stage, performing off-Broadway in New York, LA, Chicago, Toronto, Vancouver, Halifax, and even right here in Edmonton, Alberta, his hometown. It's my pleasure to welcome Ron Pederson to the fusedlogic podcast. Hello, Ron.
Hello, greetings from Bonnie Doon.
Oh man, Bonnie Doon, I love it, man. I remember. I'm unfortunately old enough to remember when Bonnie Doon was like the mall to go to. No offense to that mall, it's trying to really save itself today. But
yeah.
Wow, it's a nice community out that way, though. That's for sure.
It is. It's a nice neighborhood. That's where my family lives. So that's where I stay when I'm in Edmonton.
Fantastic. Well, it's always nice to have time with family, especially in your situation where you're constantly traveling, from place to place and spending a lot of time working away from your home. So where is your home today?
I make home in Toronto. I've been there for it'll be 10 years this summer, actually. Before that, I lived in Los Angeles for 5 years. And before that, Edmonton was and is my hometown.
Well, wonderful. Well, at least you've come back to a place where we actually have seasons.
That's right. And I'll tell you this, Edmonton is my favorite theater town in the world. It's like it's got the best creative mojo, I think,
That's very cool. Well, as you well know, because you've been a part of it in the past, we have the second largest fringe festival in the world here in Edmonton. And actually, I've had the great honor of my team and I at fusedlogic having created the largest photographic repository of any fringe event in the world. Our job was to really put Edmonton on the map in all sorts of digital ways. And so that's one of our claims to fame. It's very cool. We might even have a picture of you somewhere online doing something. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's actually a great thing to try to dig into and see if we can find one. But what I'd like to talk to you about, Ron, is tell me about the toughest element that you experience you're up against when about being a comedian. What is like the toughest thing about your job?
Well, I started out in the theater and studying theater, plays, Shakespeare, that sort of thing. And I was taking myself pretty seriously. And this was as a young man in my teens and that sort of thing. And I met Stuart Lemoyne, who's an Edmonton playwright, a comedic playwright. And he sort of blends all the worlds for my taste of drama and comedy. But I think my point is that, I've always considered myself an actor first. And so the comedic part is like a bit of icing, a bit of gravy, but it is hard as a comedian to be taken seriously sometimes as an actor. So I would say that is sort of the challenge that I've faced in terms of how other people see me, because I'm under the impression that I can do anything, but especially in Hollywood. They were very happy to put me in a box, and and to get out of that box is a challenge.
I guess that would be like Jim Carrey suddenly doing Othello, and I mean, right. It would be like, what? Come on,
Yeah, right.
Jim
right.
can't be serious, and just like Ron can't be serious. Are you kidding? The guy's hilarious. We can't put him into a serious part.
Yeah, right.
So, how do you fight against that?
Yeah, but luckily, I I did develop a bit of a reputation as an actor who can do those sorts of things. And there are artists who know me as that and utilize that, and so I get to express that, and people do witness it. And it's often surprising for people. I off the top of my head, I think of my friend Ron Jenkins, who's a brilliant playwright and director, and he wrote a play for me to do a solo show, which is quite comedic to begin with, but it goes through some really deep, dark places. And so there are artists out there who trust me to go there, and that's awesome too.
Where did you get your acting gene? Who did it come from? Where is the inspiration?
Wow, that's a good question. My mom was always she sings. She's got a beautiful voice, and so she always sang around the house. And my dad's a funny guy, and I'm not sure. I think it was just cultivated, in a petri dish of the Muppet Show on television, and having a happy childhood. And I kind of think that the best actors are sort of still in touch with themselves as a child, and sometimes I attribute being funny, being silly, being spontaneous to maybe having saved that part of myself as a child, if that makes any sense at all. Like we're all like sort of disintegrated children walking around in my mind. And if we can get back to that sense of play, that's certainly what I try to utilize.
I think that, going back to that innocence where you don't really care if anybody thinks you're silly and laughing at you or laughing with you, when you're a kid, it's like, whatever, I'm just doing what I do. I think that's an incredibly important point, because so many people hold themselves back from achieving new levels of something simply out of sort of fear of either being chastised or laughed at or criticized. And I think in your business, man, that's got to be a really tough barrier to overcome, and really be a state of mind that you have to tap into regularly. I would think. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's, you've hit it on the head there, and it's also about the power of the imagination, and the strength of my imagination as a kid. I believed a lot of the stuff that I was doing and playing and thinking, and you do take it seriously, and as a kid, sincerely, maybe not serious, but there's a sincerity in a child's heart, in the imagination. When I teach children, sometimes I teach improv, you say to a child in an improv class or an acting class, you go, okay, you're invisible right now. They immediately get it. If I'm directing a play and I say to a 35-year-old actor who went to the BFA, you're invisible, we got to sit down and have coffee for 25 minutes and talk about why he's invisible and what it feels like to be invisible. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's something in a child's mind that just goes there, that's ready.
Yeah. Yeah, ready to just jump right in and play it and be it.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Muppet?
That's a good question. I always liked that sort of surfer guitarist or the bassist, Janice. I think her name was Janice.
Yeah. That's actually hilarious. Yeah. It's funny because I think that if you were to say, okay, you have to act like your favorite Muppet for a day, that would be a lot of fun.
That'd be kind of fun, actually.
Yeah. You get a lot of weird looks, that's for sure. So today, when you're working on the kind of projects that you're working on, and I wasn't obviously joking when I said a multi-award winning actor. I mean, you've been incredibly successful and have branched out not only just from stage, but certainly you jumped into TV. Tell me about the day that you kind of found out that you were going to be a part of the cast for season 10 of Mad TV. What was that like?
Yeah, I actually did season 8, 9, and 10.
Okay.
I did 3 seasons there.
So season 8.
Yeah, that was, it was all sort of a bit of happenstance in a weird way. I went, Joe Flaherty from SCTV, he loves Dynasty, which is our Edmonton soap opera. He loves the form of it. He loves the people. And so he tried to get his own started in Los Angeles and invited some of us to help him, do that soap. at soap opera and improvised soap opera, and so I went down there for like a month, and that's when the people from Mad TV came to that show, and they sort of discovered me performing, and they invited me to come in and audition, and they asked me to do 5 characters and an impression, 5 original characters and an impression, and luckily, it was just sort of everything was in the right place because I had characters ready to go because I'd been doing Dynasty already for like 5 or 7 years. I think I'd already been doing it for 7 years. So I had all these characters just in my pocket. So I was like, this is a piece of cake, sure. And so I went in and it was really easy. And then I came back to Edmonton and they flew me back a couple of times. But I just kind of repeated the same audition that I did, the 5 characters and the impression. And I just sort of had to do that a couple more times. And then Joe Flaherty was the one who called me, actually. He called me and did a sort of switcheroo. He sort of called with a disappointed voice, and he said he had heard, and he's sort of playing it down, and then he was like, "You got it, kiddo," and I was off. So in my mind, it's all sort of a weird blur of like suddenly I was there,
yeah,
and I lived there for 5 years, and it was my life. And as I said before that, just before that, I was playing Romeo. I was doing Martin McDonough plays at the Citadel. I was doing legit theater. And so Monday night, the soap Dynasty was always what we call bowling night. So suddenly my bowling night had become my career in a weird way. So it was a trip. It was a real trip.
What was the impression you did as part of your audition? Who were you doing?
It was Woody Allen. It was my Woody Allen impression, which was just almost an impression of my friend Mike Schultz from high school, like doing his impression. But eventually I did that impression on television as well.
Was one of the impressions, or the characters rather, that you were presenting, was it the Australian pitchman and the verb alert man? Because I'll tell you, you got to have a verb alert throughout your house right now, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, the verb alert is probably my favorite thing that I think that we came up with. There were actually, I think we taped 3 verb alerts. There was like a car one and a house bad alarm. No, that character I did do an Australian character. But it was more like the crocodile hunter. It was sort of a perverted crocodile hunter. It was sort of questionable about why he was getting so close to the animals. Which actually didn't make it on TV. I don't know why. But yeah, somebody wrote that verb alert sketch, and they had just written the word crikey in there. I don't think it said that there was an Australian accent. And then I just tried a couple accents, and that's the one they liked. It is pretty silly.
I loved it. I absolutely love that sketch. In preparation for this chat, I went and watched some of your previous work, and I mean, I laughed really hard at that. I mean, how absolutely annoying! And every time the dog went in and out, the dog is inside. And
yeah, I mean, that was my favorite. That's my favorite type of sketch. My favorite type of comedy is that absurdist, playful silliness. A lot of Mad TV was satire and parody, but I liked when we sort of made our own world up.
So I know that Susan Sarandon was on the show. Who else was notable that you had a chance to work with for an episode over the years?
Well, it's a lot of people came through there, so I got to meet a lot of my heroes like Eric Idle, Christopher Guest. I didn't actually perform with, but they were on the show, and so they're around, And but I performed with I spent a day with Alanis Morissette. She was actually there for 2 days, and I played her boyfriend in a sketch, and I was pretty starstruck by her because that was about 5 years after Jagged Little Pill. She was still killing it, and I was a fan, and so there was that element of like, wow, I was just listening to you in my car, and now here we are talking about Dickens. I remember we were talking about Charles Dickens, but there was the surreal thing of being around celebrities was real. Yeah.
When you look back, and it doesn't matter what sort of genre, type of acting that that you're thinking of. But when you look, back in your career and you're starting out, who was an actor or a professional that you really admired for how they attacked their craft, and what did you learn from them?
This is going to be a bit weird, I think, but the first person that comes to my mind is an actor named Tim Curry, who is sort of famous for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and he was a rock star. And he was just an actor that I admired in movies. Clue is being the main one. When I was like maybe 11 years old, or maybe even younger, maybe 10 years old, I saw the movie Clue, and I recognized Tim Curry as an actor from this other movie, Annie. And it was when I was starting to put together what acting was, beyond just, there's that guy I know from a movie. Who is that guy? What did he do? And I remember being in the library and looking at these old books about New York theater, and then there were pictures of him in plays. He was in Amadeus, and he was in musicals, and I was like, oh, I get it. So this guy does a little bit of everything, and he does it really fucking well. Oops, sorry, I swore. But he and then I found out he had rock albums. He put out these albums as a singer, and I just remember going, that guy is cool. He does it all. And for some reason, when you ask that question, he comes off the top of my head. And I eventually met him a couple of times, and I met a lot of famous people when I lived in Los Angeles. But for some reason, him and John Ritter, those are kind of the two from my childhood that were like really inspiring, and I got to meet both of them, so that's cool.
That is cool. I know that when you taking what you told me earlier about wanting to not be pigeonholed, put in a box, and only be just a comedian or just an improv comedian, and you want to be able to do lots of different types of acting. This is obviously, it makes sense to me that you would pick a guy like Tim Curry. And in fact, I learned something there new, because I didn't know he did all those different things in terms of talent wise and stuff. So that's really cool. So can you play a bunch of instruments as well? Like, are you a musician as well?
Well, no, I sing, and I can kind of fake a good tap dance if you need, and I play guitar, and I play a little bit of drums now and then, and I'm a dabbler in that sort of sense. But improvisation, acting, they all feed each other, and improv is a huge philosophy for me, even when I'm doing a scripted work, and vice versa. And if I'm doing something improvised, I try to give it a polish, or what's the word I'm looking for? Just not an urgency, but a drive that I would give if I were doing something scripted. They all feed each other.
Right. So talking about improv, one of the things I want to ask you is, how fast does your brain need to work when you're on stage performing an improv skit with other professionals who are really good too? How fast do you have to think?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a relative term, It's like it's more about to me being present. That's not to get too new agey on us, but the power of now is like, it's this huge thing of how there can you be, how present can you be in your body, how much can you let go of your mind, really. Because it's the more you think, the more cluttered you get, and the less you're listening. So the more you can it's sort of an openness that you need to have, so that the impulse can come through. So it's more about letting go than it is about thinking as fast as you can, if that makes any sense.
It does. So what I took from that was that to be great at improv, you have to have a quiet mind, listen really well, and be in the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It's awareness and a readiness. Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, in fact, in such a distracted world that we live in today, it can be incredibly difficult just to quiet your mind and remove all the distractions. I had the good fortune of interviewing Jay Papasan on the show. He's the co-author of a book called The One Thing, and I would highly recommend you if you read books on the plane or whatever, maybe just pick it up. And what they do is they focus on helping you zero in and remove all this kind of clutter from your to-do list in your world and help you achieve even more by being really in that moment and present on and focusing on the one thing. For example, one of the things that I think you'll really appreciate this. One of the things that examples they use is Jerry Seinfeld, a comedian asked Jerry, how did you get to be so good and at sort of what you do? And he said, well, what I do is I scratch out a couple of hours of time every day to just do nothing but write jokes. And I don't let anything get in my way of that. I don't let anything impede on that. Those 2 hours are for writing jokes and writing jokes only. That's it. And he says, and then I just don't break the chain. And so, of course, the question came, well, what do you mean by break the chain? He says, well, I take those 2 hours every single day, and that's what I do. And on a calendar, I just keep marking off the X's of every day I've just spent 2 hours writing jokes.
That's right. There's great freedom in the discipline of it.
Yeah. And now the guy's driving really antique Porsches, and he's got his own show on Netflix, right? So obviously,
what he wanted, yeah.
Yeah. So if you were, when we take a look back and what is when no one's looking, right? What is one of your like sort of secret hobbies or things to do that you really enjoy? It's sort of a personal passion, but maybe nobody really knows.
Well, just to stay on the theme here. I meditate. I took a meditation workshop or a course rather in Los Angeles years ago, and I dabbled. I dabbled for a few years, and then I started to pick up the practice a bit more regularly, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I meditate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, and I've done it for a few years now. And it's a game changer, and it's about all the stuff that we've been talking about, about focus and about discipline, and it's kind of like playing piano scales every day on your consciousness, where you start to practice being here now, and that this meditation has fed its way into every aspect of my life, family, improvisation, acting, writing. It's a very powerful practice. It seems really exotic and foreign, but it's actually a very simple thing to do, and it's very powerful.
Some of the best processes are simple, aren't they?
That's right, and I think Jerry Seinfeld actually meditates as well.
That would surprise me. It's an important point because I think that often we don't take enough time. Especially in business, I mean, we just don't take enough time for ourselves to calm our mind and get centered and get focused and walk ourselves through the day. But, you take a look at some of the best athletes in the world, and visualization, which might be a form of, targeted meditation, but visualization of doing the run before they ski it, or I'm a skier, doing the run before they ski it, or, whatever it is, seeing the shot before they take it is a really important thing. I think Jordan Eberle right now could do a bit more meditation, maybe. Sorry, Jordan, but, maybe.
Yeah, it's about really, being present, and the sports analogy is really good too, like, They talk about as you meditate, as you get more present, and you're more there throughout your day, and you're more there on the basketball court. It's not like you're necessarily getting better at basketball. I mean, you are, but that hoop suddenly becomes a little bit bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're there, there's less distraction. It's just you and the hoop in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in business, you go through ups and downs where you're getting lots of no's to your proposals or your quotes or whatever, and then all of a sudden they just flood in, and it's yeses, and everybody's saying yes to no. Like you could say, hey, I'm going to bake you a cake. I'm not a baker, but I'll do that, and okay, great, and so I think that's a really great analogy. So tell me, do you think that that's one of the key differences between, say, yourself, which is a constantly sort of working actor, director, and with a great career now, as opposed to someone who maybe hasn't had the same level of consistency working? What are some of the differences between a working actor and a not working actor, obviously besides the paycheck?
Yeah. I don't know. I've only been I don't attribute meditation to all of it, but it certainly focused me later in terms of like figuring out what I want, because I've been pretty lucky to just stay busy and have my choice of certain things, and a lot of that, that came from just being in Edmonton as a young actor and getting on stage. To me, what I need as an actor is an audience. And it took me a long time to figure that out because, I went away and I was on television and I was like, what's missing, And I was like trying to get back to the theater all the time. And I was like, I guess it's just I need a deeper script, or I need Shakespeare, or I need a profound message in the art, but it wasn't really true. What I'm best at is moving an audience, being with an audience, tricking an audience, seducing an audience, moving an audience. That is the science that I like, the science of listening. And the word audience comes from, a Greek word meaning to listen. And so that being in the room, that is what's powerful to me. And so that draw is what's strongest. And I was lucky enough in Edmonton to have opportunity to just get on stage 4 times a week, improvising, doing plays, eight shows a week. I mean, and again, I was doing Shakespeare. I was doing musicals at the Citadel. I was doing brand new plays at the Fringe. It was so. That's my recommendation to any actors, to just get on stage and just start doing it. Acting is doing,
right?
And so if you can just get into the groove of getting in front of an audience, which frankly I don't know how easy that is anymore, but there are lots of great opportunities. It's certainly through improvisation that was important because I could get on stage more than once a week if I didn't have a job.
Yeah, you got into the zone, really, just getting into your mindset. So who's the toughest character you've ever had to portray on stage?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. The toughest character, the toughest parts that I think about are the ones that I sort of didn't get, that I couldn't figure out. There are certain roles, certain problem plays that I've been in. I was in a play in Toronto a couple of years ago, and it was a British farce, and it was set in the 70s, and so I was given a wig and these funny shoes, and I thought, oh, okay, this is my character, not thinking that these are actually just characteristics, and just the way we worked, I never really figured out the character, and that was always sort of a disappointing thing to me. It was, and a couple of years later, I was reading John Lithgow's book, autobiography, the actor John Lithgow, and he was talking about how he played the part, and in it he describes how he played it completely different from our take on it, and I was like, damn it, if only I had thought of that, and it was a very simple thing. It was just how the character was dressed, and I just wish I had fought a little bit more. So the parts that were the most difficult in my mind are the ones that I have the biggest regrets about.
Right. So you no doubt are following Schitt's Creek, and
sure.
The series is hilarious. I'm sure that most, if not all, that are listening to the podcast have has hopefully seen more than one episode, have watched the seasons, but they're into their 3rd season. Are Canadians, how funny are Canadians in your opinion compared to the rest of the world? You've worked in many, many different places. How do we rank?
Well, I mean, I think you don't even need to ask me. You just have to look around at the entertainment industry, and you could see comedy is dominated by Canadians. I don't know people have asked me that question before. What is it about Canadians? Why? I'm not sure. There's something in our culture where we just don't take ourselves as seriously, and we're a bit more inward looking. So we're able to laugh at ourselves a little more. And maybe that's based on the weather. We all stay in the pub for an extra beer because it's cold outside. Yeah. We gotta do something while the car's warming up. So I don't know if that's my theory anyway. But,
yeah. Who do you think is the most underrated comedian or actor in Canada today? You think is got serious talent and maybe is an up and comer that you might have had to work with?
That's a good question. I mean, there are two, off the top of my head, there are two amazing improvisers, two girls. They're my dear friends. And they have a troupe. They call themselves the Sufferettes, and they're Kayla Larette and Becky Johnson, and they're two Toronto improvisers, but also actors and filmmakers, and they're very exciting, and they appear on things all the time, and I think we'll probably see a lot more of them soon.
Speaking of trying to see a lot more of you, Ron, what just as your final question here, what are you working on right now? Where can somebody go and see you perform?
Well, I came to Edmonton to do a Christmas show here, and every time I come to Edmonton, I have the hard choice of being asked to do things and stay in Edmonton because I have so many great friends here who do amazing work. So I'm actually writing right now with the filmmaker Trevor Anderson, an Edmonton filmmaker. I'm helping with him to write a screenplay for the next month, and then I'm staying in Edmonton until February 25th. I'm going to do a run of a musical review at the Varscona that opens on the 15th. It's called A Romance at the Varscona Theatre, and it's an evening retrospective of all the great romantic songs from the theatre, and it'll be funny and the amazing singers. It's like 4 other just really talented people. So Kate Ryan has put that together, and I can't say no to her.
Well, that's awesome. I know that, my family and I really enjoyed, you and the pantomime Robin Hood, and and it was a lot of fun. It was obviously, it was, I have to say that, it was clear that you were a professional. You really did command the stage, and you certainly were one of the best Robin Hoods I've ever seen. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. You could tell that the actors on stage were enjoying themselves and hoping to entertain. So thank you for that. It was very enjoyable. And I want to thank you very much, Ron, for spending this time today and coming on to the fusedlogic podcast. I've really enjoyed it, and I've learned a whole lot, and I appreciate you sharing some of the private parts of your life in terms of meditation and the processes you go through to really perfect your craft. Thank you so much, Ron, for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure as well. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was Ron Pederson. He's a Canadian actor and director and certainly a comedian, and but we don't want to put him into a box of just comedy. I think that was a really important point. And I had no idea that Ron was, had such skill to be able to do things like Shakespeare and so on. I mean, hey, but come on, another great Canadian, William Shatner did Shakespeare. Ron, obviously, there's a whole lot of talent in this country as it relates to the performing arts, and so I really do appreciate and respect you all because, man, I'll tell you, it takes such skill to get on stage and perform like you do and entertain like you do. So, and in those in film and in another, dance and so on. So great job. Keep it up and keep pushing the Alberta film industry and the Canadian film industry. And Ron, all the best going forward. Some of the things I learned from talking with Ron are, that quiet mind. I think it's incredibly important as business owners and myself. I know that every day I do try to take some time. I mean, I haven't had the good fortune of taking a meditation course like he did in LA. However, spending time just centering yourself and getting ready to tackle the day so that you can be at your best, I think is really important. And also stretching yourself into new areas. One of the cool things that we're working on here at fusedlogic is we're working with Thomas at Octavo Productions. We're producing original music. I mean, of course, the music here on this show is original, but we're producing original music for all sorts of other purposes. And so we've got some really cool secret projects that we're talking about right now. And so I really do thank Thomas for his time and his expertise in pulling this kind of musical projects together. It's very cool. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to Ron's story and listening to the show and continuing to share this podcast with your friends and encouraging them to listen. Send them to fusedlogic.com. You can certainly hear us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at fusedlogicpod or on Facebook. please head to newbeginningsmexico.org and make a donation. Help the folks down there stay out of the city dump and create new jobs and new businesses for themselves. One of the things that it's really important to remember, folks, not only am I your host, Walter Schwabe, but you are made to thrive.
Fused Logic. Analytics and engagement evolved.